Today in our 5-minute guide series, I'll show you how to ask good clarifying questions. Clarification is the second step to open a case interview. If you haven't watched my video on how to open a case interview, please check out the link above. This is a follow-up of that video. Let me say this in advance. All the problem solving in the world can't get you that McKinsey job if you end up solving the wrong problem. If that ever happens in a real consulting project, the client is going to waste millions of dollars and consultancy ruins their reputation. And if it happens in your McKinsey, BCG, or Bain case interview, you'll walk away with a 12-month ban from reapplying to the firm. Do it right, and not only will you be able to solve the deepest, most concerning problem for the client, but you will also do it efficiently. You are less likely to get stuck, and if you do get stuck, you can get out faster because you have more information. On top of all that, you will look and sound like a real consultant. What should I ask during clarification? For each case, you should focus your clarifying efforts on 4 buckets: the client, the problem, the objective, and other case-specific nuances. If this looks familiar, yes, this is the same structure you would use for the previous recap step. First of all, the client. Make sure you understand who the client is and what they do, for example, how they produce and sell their products, and what their market is like. Secondly, the problem. This is where you find out what issue the client is facing and what is the objective they want to reach. How do you quantify each of them? What's the timeline? Thirdly, the objective, or more precisely, the kind of deliverables the client would receive. Are there any scope limits? Are we doing a diagnosis or a strategy recommendation? Finally, the other bucket. Each case likely has something special for you to discover. Perhaps there are regulations to worry about. Perhaps there are stakeholders you should be mindful of. Sometimes the interviewer gives you a long and detailed case prompt, containing most or even all of the necessary information. Most of the time they don't, and the given information will cover only part of the aforementioned buckets. In such cases, you will need to ask for the necessary information. In fact, they expect you to ask this kind of question. Let's run an exercise to see how all this theory plays out in practice, shall we? The case we use will be the same one in the Recap 5-minute guide. You will need to watch it before this video. Link will be in the description. Once you've done the recap part, spend 30 seconds outlining a few key bullets to clarify, then present your questions as if in a real interview. Then, unpause this video to hear a suggested version. Okay, are you ready? Pause this video and ask your clarifying questions. Now you can hear my suggested version.
Okay, next I would like to spend a few minutes clarifying the case. I would ask a few background questions about our client, their problem, and their objective, just so I can approach the case with a clear mental model on what's happening. That is to make sure I can deliver the most on-point case approach.
Yes, go on.
Sure. I'll state all my questions first. First of all, can you tell me some more about how our client does business and how their YouTube channel generates revenue? For example, it looks like they buy from manufacturers and then sell to consumers. Is that correct? I also suppose they generate revenue from YouTube by referring to their own website, but do they have other revenue streams such as sponsorships? Do they also sell motorcycles? I suppose not, because you did not mention them. Secondly, how big is the decline in revenue growth? Specifically, what was the growth rate 5 years ago, and what is it now? And lastly, for the objective of this case, do we just focus on revenue, or can we also look at costs? Because the way I see it, this is fundamentally a profitability concern. And in dealing with profits, we have to think about costs as well.
Okay, I'll answer your questions one by one. For the first question, all your assumptions are correct. Also, they have only 2 sources of revenue from YouTube, from referring customers to their website, where hopefully they will buy F0 gear, and from YouTube monetization. No affiliate partnerships. For the second question, I'd give you a table later, but since you asked, let's just say growth was 30% per annum 5 years ago. It slowed down to 25% 3 years ago, but last year it dropped to almost 0. For the last question, we'd only look at revenue for now.
Thanks. Is there anything else I should keep in mind? For example, any qualitative requirements or limits from our client on the possible solutions?
No, they give us free rein to work on the strategy.
That's great.
Now it's time for a few comments and caveats. What you've just seen is a good case scenario where the interviewer was fairly cooperative and clarification yielded 2 important pieces of data. 1, the client does not run affiliate partnerships hinting at a potential avenue for growth, and 2, their revenue growth seemed to have ended abruptly, possibly due to a sudden disruptive event. The candidate can now decide on a much more tailored, informed approach as a result. Not all cases can be like this. Some are simply much more complex, or the interviewer might challenge you by forcing you forward. In such cases, you will have to accept the challenge and move on to answer the questions without much information. But considering the potential benefits if you clarify the case well, the risks if you do it wrong, and the fact that it's omnipresent in consulting work, this is the one step you cannot omit. That's the end of today's video. If you like our contents, don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on your notifications to receive our latest updated videos. We also have a consulting community. Follow the in the description to connect with cool, like-minded people and experts. At M Consulting Prep, we believe that everyone can make it to consulting. Are you a believer?